guessing it's on? Okay, so those of you that don't know me, as Kayla said, my name is Ashley Chitwood. I have been at Celebrate for about 8 years now. For those of you that do know that this is the absolute most terrifying thing on the planet to me. So, most people share a lot about their childhood. I, however, will not. It's not only my story to share, and I have other people who haven't got as far as me that's part of the story, so I'm not going to share a whole lot of my childhood. But I will summarize my childhood to say that it was complete chaos. There was no structure, there was no routine. There was absolutely no boundaries. I didn't even know what a boundary was until like 2 years ago. So, most people say that a testimony is before God, when you meet God, and then after God. However, I don't know a life without God. I have known God my entire life. He has protected me from so much in my childhood. I really was completely unaware of everything that happened in my childhood. He was just always there. So, probably about 13, 14, the protection that God had placed in my life was just completely torn down. Call it growing up, call it, I don't know what. Whatever it was, for whatever reason, the blissfulness of not knowing what was going on was completely gone. So, on top of the regular teenage years where, you don't know who you are, you don't know what's going on or why you're so different, I had a lovely home life. I had parents who were there sometimes weren't. They weren't very involved, we will say. So, at this point, I was faced with a choice to continue following the path that God had placed for me, continuing to be obedient, continuing to choose His way, or follow culture and follow what society tells us. And in my 13, 14-year-old brain, I believed that God had let me down and that He didn't protect me, so I chose culture and I chose society. So I went into my adult years believing that since my childhood was so awful and so chaotic that I deserved to act and treat people however I wanted to, I really didn't think that I deserved or that anyone else deserved for me to be nice or for me to care how they felt about things. I chose a lot of risky behavior. Reckless driving was probably my biggest one. Before I was 20, I was 1 point away from losing my license. Drinking, drugs, premarital sex, children out of wedlock, if it gave me a rush, if it made me feel better about whatever the situation was, it was better than feeling the real that I was avoiding. So I believed that Ashley's way was just fine, and who was I to believe that I deserved anything more than just fine? So my childhood defined me in a lot of different ways. I believed that I was what everyone said that my parents were. I believed that I was trailer trashed. I believed that I was poor. I believed that I wasn't going to amount to anything and that nothing would ever change but God. So, 11 years ago, I left my oldest daughter's father, and when I did, I would have told you 100% that it was all his fault, that I did nothing wrong, that I was perfect, and he was not. However, I thankfully had a friend in college who was an alcoholic, so she gave me an AA book for various strongholds. I don't remember what the name of the book was, but it went through various strongholds. I read the whole book. I could have quoted every word in that book to you, but it was just head knowledge. It was not heart knowledge. It wasn't a true change. It was just information that I read on a piece of paper and could quote and throw back at you. So I continued my reckless life. I continued trying to control. I continued not leaning on God. So I had pushed everyone away with my anger, with manipulation, with control, you name it, I did it. My rock bottom was about 8 years ago. I had literally thrown everyone out of my house and was left sitting at home wondering how I got here, what they had done to me to leave me in this position. So, those of you who know Laurie Pifo, I called her at probably midnight in tears and a complete chaotic mess. So she got me a Stephen minister probably in like 2 days, which anyone that's ever tried to get a Stephen minister, it's not that fast, but God. So my Stephen minister, I met with her for a few weeks, and then she was like, hey, so there's this class on Monday nights for emotions, and they're going over anger, and I think it would really, really help you to go to this class. So I went to that class that Luana leads, and love Luana, but at this particular point in my life, I walk into this room, and everyone in this room is crying, and I really just wanted to kill people more when I left there than when I got there. So I called my Stephen minister, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, it's just making my anger worse. Like, I can't do this. So she was like, well, just keep going to Celebrate, and let's see. So she introduced me to Heather Duncan and Betty, who used to be here on the prayer team. Love those ladies. I went through prayer with them for probably about 9 months. I went through what is called Freedom in Christ, which is praying off different things in your life. It's supposed to be like 13 weeks, but it took me about 9 months to go through it because there's a lot of stuff. So at the end of that, I felt, okay, I'm healed. I've got all this stuff out of my life. I can do this. Like, I feel great. So I started serving. I started doing Bible studies. I was reading my Bible. I was praying. I was doing all the things, checking all the boxes, but I was still angry. And I couldn't figure out why, and still was continuing to blame everyone else on the face of the planet. So in walks Catherine about 3 years ago, and she says, hey, I need 12 steps for codependency. And I'm like, hey, well, there's 12 steps for chemical dependency. And she's like, no, like, I need 12 steps for codependency. And I'm like, hey, I don't know what that is, but if you go, I'll go with you. Those of you that know what codependency is, we did it together, because what else would we do? So I started that 3 years ago. I've actually been through 12 steps 1.5 times. And oh my Jesus, there was so much. I learned that I really wasn't facing anything. I really wasn't dealing with anything. I was running from everyone and everything. And really the root of all my problems was me, which that was a hard pill to swallow. So now Catherine and I lead the 12 steps of codependency. We went through it together, and now we lead it together. But the biggest thing that I have learned through all of this is, first of all, recovery is not about what you've been through. Like, a big part of the reason why I didn't want to share a lot of my childhood is because when people hear my childhood, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And, they feel for me, which rightfully so. But at the same time, like, I made my choices. So, but my childhood did not define me. My parents are addicts, but That doesn't mean that I had to be an addict. My parents didn't graduate. That doesn't mean that I wasn't going to graduate. So, along with that, our worth is not found in where we come from. Where I was born, I wasn't worth anything. I wasn't going to amount to anything. I might second that on the tissues there, Corey. I had teachers in school say, you can't take this class, you can't do this because we don't believe that you can. But I did it. Our worth is founded in how we respond. I responded in anger. I responded in so many stupid things. I never responded in grace. I never responded in believing that my worth was founded in God, even though I knew that. And the differences that God placed inside of me that were comfort in my childhood years, I ran from it. I thought that I wouldn't have friends and I wouldn't find my people. But coming here to celebrate, I found my people. I stepped out into who God made me to be and who He said that I was, and I found my people. And I have a huge, huge set of wise counsel that has followed me all of my 8 years. And this went way faster than I thought it would. But my last thing is darkness. Because of my childhood, because of a lot of the things that I went through, there's a lot of darkness. And my way of trying to deal with that was to avoid it, to hide it, to pretend like it wasn't there, and eventually it'll go away. That's not true. God has definitely shown me through 12 steps that He loves me in my darkness. He accepts my darkness. And yes, we are called to be Jesus' light, but God created the darkness just as well as He did the light, and He can handle it. And it wasn't until, and sadly she's not here, but it wasn't until Luana told me one night, she said, Ashley, who are you to say that He is so weak that He can't handle your darkness? And that just wrecked me. It completely wrecked me. Because I had believed it. I'd believed that He couldn't handle it. The people in my life couldn't handle it, so why would God? And the moment that I accepted my darkness, accepted everything that I'd been through in my life, and accepted that He made me and put me in the life that He put me in for a reason, everything changed. I think that's it.